Hello students, in our previous video we have discussed the periodization of the British literary history up to Puritan interregnum. Now this is the second part of that video, and in this video we would be discussing the rest of the ages of English literature, and we'll start with neoclassical times. Neoclassical period start from 1660 up to until 1785. So neoclassical period was quite a massive time in terms of literary contributions, and we can further divide this period into three ages. First is Restoration age, second is Augustan age, and third is your age of sensibility or the age of Dr. Samuel Johnson. So first is your Restoration age. Restoration age starts with the restoration of King Charles II, and when he became the monarch of England, he was restored on the throne of England, and he was the son of King Charles I. So Charles II came from France, and he was quite a liberal king in terms of dramatic contributions. The first important thing of Restoration age was the reopening of the theatres and the dramatic performances. So Restoration era was the age of drama, and is famous for its heroic dramas by John Dryden, and most importantly the Restoration drama or the Comedy of Manners. The most important poet of Restoration age was John Dryden. He was a poet laureate and the poet of satires, particularly political satires. The age of neoclassical period is Augustan age, and it starts in year 1700 up to until 1745. So Augustan, the term, is actually a self-claimed entity by the writers or the poets like Alexander Pope, because they considered themselves as great as the poets of the King Augustus, the court of King Augustus, like Horace, Virgil and Ovid. So it's very clear that Augustan age was quite influenced by the classical writings, by classical techniques, and as well as by classical themes. Most of the poetry of Augustan age was written in heroic couplets, and Alexander Pope was the most important writer of Augustan age. Alexander Pope wrote satires like Rape of the Lock, the Dunciad, Essay on and the books like Essay on Man, Essay on Criticism. So this age was dominated by Alexander Pope. However, we have writers, very famous writers of prose like Jonathan Swift and Daniel Defoe. Most importantly, writers of journals like Richard Steele and Joseph Addison. The important thing about the Augustan age is that that was the time of the birth and development of a new literary genre, namely the novel or the fiction. The important fiction writer of that times were your Henry Fielding, Samuel Richardson, Tobias Smollett, and last but not the least, Lawrence Sterne, who wrote Tristram Shandy. So these are the various kinds of literary contributions of Augustan age. Next is the age of sensibility or the age of Dr. Samuel Johnson. So students, it starts from 1745, but the age of Samuel Johnson is also famous for a kind of revolt against the neoclassical tendencies of writings, and this is also the time of the pre-romantics. So we have writers like Thomas Gray and William Cowper and James Thomson, etc. The literary giant of that age was Dr. Samuel Johnson, who was the great scholar and the great man of letters, and he was the person who who wrote the monumental Dictionary of English Language in year 1755. So Dr. the Samuel Johnson was a representative figure of the age of sensibility, and that's why we call it the age of Johnson also. So we conclude the age of sensibility with year 1785. But before 1785, 1776 was very important, because in year 1776 America got its independence, and it was the year of the publication of the Edward Gibbon's monumental work, that is the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. So we conclude age of sensibility or the age of Samuel Johnson in year 1785. Next is Romantic period. Romantic period starts in year 1785, or we can consider it in 1789 also, because that was the year of French Revolution, up to until 1832, the year of the first reform bills. So Romanticism was quite a big movement in terms of intellectual change, in terms of cultural change, in terms of political changes also. Year 1798 was the year of the publication of Lyrical Ballad, which was a joint contribution of S.T. Coleridge and William Wordsworth. So Lyrical Ballad is called the official manifesto of Romantic movement, because in this particular work we find a kind of an introduction of a new kind of poetry, a new kind of subject matter in a very in a very fresh and in a language of a common man. In comparison to neoclassical time, Romantic times are a kind of a presentation of one's individuality, one's subjectivity, and of course one's identity also. Romantic movement is also marked by the love for freedom, the love for liberty, the love for equality and fraternity. The major contributors of Romantic times were William Blake, S.T. Coleridge, William Wordsworth, and the second generation of Romantics like P.B. Shelley, John Keats and Lord Byron. As far as prose is concerned, or essays were concerned, great essayists were there like your Charles Lamb, like your William Hazlitt and Leigh Hunt. So students, we conclude Romantic era with year 1832 with the first reform bills. Our next age, that is Victorian age, starts from 1832, the year of the first reform bills, till 1901 with the death of Queen Victoria. So 1837 was the year when Queen Victoria became the monarch of England, and the age of Queen Victoria or the Victorian times was an age of conflicted opinions about society, about tradition, about morality, about conventions and about science also. So this was an age of mixed tendencies, mixed literary tendencies as well as mixed social and cultural tendencies. Literature of Victorian age is marked by its realistic writings as well as its adventure fiction. So major realistic writers were Charles Dickens, your W. Macclesfield Thackeray, George Eliot, George Meredith, most importantly Thomas Hardy, and of course we have Bronte sisters, and we have many adventure writers also. Another important feature of Victorian age was the movements, the literary movements. First, Pre-Raphaelites, and second is your aestheticism. Our last age is 20th century. So 20th century starts in year 1901 with the death of Queen Victoria. 20th century was a complex age, students, because of huge changes in society, because of the huge changes in culture and in politics. So most important phases of 20th century literature were modernism and postmodernism. 20th century is also marked by the beginning of the First World War and then the Second World War. First World War 1914 to 1918 and Second World War 1939 to 1945. Also we have inter-war years, which was the time of high modernism. So high modernism was the time of writers like T.S. Eliot, James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, D.H. Lawrence, Joseph Conrad and Aldous Huxley. So we conclude modernism till 1945, means the time period between the initiation of the First World War and the ending of the Second World War is called modernism. Modernism in itself is a great socio-political and literary and cultural movement, and it's very complex in nature, marked by experimentative integrations in terms of writing literature, in terms of themes, as well as in terms of literary movements. In this particular age, we witness movements like Imagism, Symbolism, Dadaism, Cubism and Naturalism, etc. Next is postmodernism. So students, postmodernism starts from 1945 after the Second World War, with the devastations and the destructions of the Second World War with atomic explosions. So postmodernism is a kind of technically is a continuation of counter traditional experiments of modern era, as well as a kind of a portrayal of a disillusioned society. So most important movements of postmodernism were like Angry Young Men and your absurdist theatre. After Second World War, the world politics divided into communist and the capitalist lines, and there started Cold War. So, literature also reflected those conflicted tendencies of the times, and in absurdist theatre, we, that restlessness and uselessness and that feeling of meaninglessness took its expression in the works of writers like Samuel Beckett, Harold Pinter, Tom Stoppard, Edward Albee, etc. After the end of Cold War, we witness an emergence of third world literature in contemporary times. So, third world literature is marked by thematic concerns like neo-colonialism, like racial discrimination, racial suppression, feminism, feminist values, sexual discrimination, and a very new thing, globalization. So in this session we have discussed history of English literature from the very beginning to the contemporary times. This discussion is going to help you really well, and if you want to join my online classes or live lectures, then you can contact us at the given numbers, or you can check the links given in the description box. See you in the next video. Till then, take care.